Hello, everyone. This is Brandon, and I want to welcome you all here to the Tansson Talk Show, where our mission here is to help bring people together. I'm so excited to bring you the show every week, and I'm very excited for this episode. So please take a moment to introduce my guest here today, Justin Lancaster. Welcome back to the show.
Happy to be here again.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you back. And so first of all, how are you doing today?
Um, it's been a nice day. Cold, very cold.
I would imagine as such, this nice end of autumn time that we're in, heading into, winter and not that long of a time. But yeah, I really hope that you've been doing well since our last discussion.
How long ago was that anyway?
So, that's a good question. So, yeah, so our last discussion was actually recorded on June 8th of 2022.
Oh man. So like a year and a half ago?
Yeah, give or take. I mean, does it feel like it's been that long?
It really doesn't. I knew it was a while, but wow, year and a half. That's crazy. I thought it was like 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, and to think our first ever, discussion on here was back in late March of 2021. I
Oh
mean,
man.
where's the time gone?
Oh, that's crazy. So yeah, third time here, like fifth year or something. Wait, no, 2021, 2 years, 2 years. Fifth year I've known you. No, fourth. Whatever. It's been a while.
Yeah, well, nevertheless, I'm so excited to have you on, Justin. And yeah, and like I said, I mean, I've been so excited to speak with you. But for anyone who is just now meeting you for the first time as a viewer, are you able to reintroduce yourself for the watching and
Of
listening
course.
audience here today?
Hello, my name's Justin Lancaster. I am a junior in majoring in communications at Texas A&M currently. Uh, yeah, pretty much. If you watch the previous ones, you'll see how my journey has gone a lot of directions over time, but this is where I am now.
Well, I'm so glad, to hear that you're like in a spot that you are at least more comfortable.
Yeah, a lot more comfortable. Yeah, I think unlike the last times I was here, I really feel like I have a direction that I'm going, you know?
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And yeah, as a refresher for new viewers, I believe that your previous major was visualization.
Yes, I took a year in that and it didn't quite go so well. It wasn't what I'd been expecting going in. So I took a year between majors trying to figure out where I wanted to go, and I ended up in communications. That was been technically just this semester.
Awesome. And yeah, and I'm glad that you were able to take the time, to figure out what you wanted to do. And something I meant to ask last time was, you know, when you were switching from visualization to communication, like did you know specifically like what type of route you wanted to go on to, or was it truly just like going through majors trying to figure out which one seems more like my skill set
Yeah,
and interest?
that second one is pretty much it. I was just like, I don't know what I want to do, but it's not this. So I'm going to just take like a semester or two of easy core classes that I will need anyway, and I can try and figure out something that not just I want to do, but also I am like capable of doing at a competent level. Um, like you hear a lot that about people who like change majors or have to change like two or three or maybe graduate and end up not even using their major for anything. Like, yeah, I think it's just like a normal, a healthy thing to do to, um, like you learn about yourself at this stage of life and you direct yourself in something that can be like a proper career, you know? Because if you take the wrong route, you'll either end up hating yourself or just unable to keep up with like the environment or something. Like if I had gone into engineering, for example, I probably wouldn't be able to get a job in that field. Not It's not just a lack of competence in that like skill set. It's the temperament, the ability to do certain things, like consistently. Some things just wear you down, you know?
Yeah, I definitely understand that, and I feel like some skills that you're even good at, like, are not ones that I
Hmm.
believe that you should really go into. And like, I know for visualization, like, what got you originally into that major?
Um, well, in high school, I was super into 3D animation, and I didn't really know where I was going, so I was like, well, I like this. I'll just see if I can get into this nice program for it we have in town. And I did, so I just sort of went along with that, not really putting enough thought into where I was going in life. And what do you know, that ended up being as poor a choice as it sounds in retrospect.
Well, at least you were able to figure it out before, like, you were too in debt with the
Hmm.
major.
Yeah, it's even now causing problems because of how many inapplicable hours I took of it, and that was just 1 year. Like any more, and I would have to have taken a minor in the field just to be able to graduate.
That's crazy to think about. And I know, even though you are a communication major now, which is something that you actually announced back on our
Hmm.
most recent discussion, last summer, I believe you said that it's not even until next semester that you can really even get into your communication
Yes,
classes.
this semester has been the first I've actually been in this major, and I haven't even taken any of the main classes for the major yet. That'll be next semester while I try and catch up.
So even with that, so thus far, like, what type of classes have you been taking in the meantime between majors?
I've done core classes, my science prerequisites, my English, my culture and literature, history, that sort of thing that they always require of you. I've also taken some of the major specific things such as statistics, for example. That's required by the major.
Yeah, I remember taking statistics, for my communication major in undergrad, and it definitely was an interesting experience, like going through the different core classes. Some I had already like long taken before I even entered college, but others, like, statistics were just like, I just need to like squeeze this in somewhere. Like, I ultimately ended up doing it over a summer
Hmm.
that I just transferred the credit over back to the university. So, but nevertheless, though, like, how's it been taking these core classes and like being in this little intermediate time where it's just like you finish your, well, you would finish up your stuff from your previous major, but you're not quite there yet at your current major.
Um, I don't really think it's anything crazy. At first, it was really relaxing, just taking like classes that filled the prerequisite stuff I'll need to get eventually, but that just really interested me. And I've actually developed some new passions by taking on this class. For example, classic literature. It's been very interesting looking through all this new stuff without having to really dial down and focus on anything harder than the math and science courses I'm taking, which they're not easy, but um, they fit my skills, so it's not too bad, is what I would say. So it's been very relaxing and very healthy for my mental state, I'd say.
Well, I'm glad at least you're able to to explore your new passion more. And out of curiosity, like, how did you get into classic literature?
Um, I just took the so I was required to take 9 hours, which is three courses of literature and like media stuff. So I took this one history of science fiction class over this last summer, and it was really the professor. He really was into all of these different novels and like just classic works, but he was really into them, and the way he described and explained what's going on and the importance of these novels for like that genre of literature as a whole just really got to me, and I ended up I ended up taking another of his classes this past semester for actual classics, just because of how engaging it was. It really got me thinking, you know?
That's great that you're able to, to explore that and like and find the professors that really like engage you and and want you to learn, because I feel like it's always these, connections, especially with educators, that really help like spark our personal passions alongside our academic ones. And so I'm just so glad that you're, enjoying it and taking full advantage of those classes.
Yeah, I think I'm glad I've had an opportunity like this. Not everyone just, some people go through their entire careers of not even just college, but also like public schooling or whatever, just never having any really good teachers and professors that can really expand your, not just your knowledge, but also like your like field of frame of mind sort of thing, you know? It's like a expansion of your vision. Once you get an educator who really is just interested, they're proud, they know their content and they really deeply care about it and how you interact with it. That I think that leaves a mark on you.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I mean, I know even for me, like I don't know, there were some classes like throughout the years, whether like, from public school going into college that, you know, it may not have been the specific class or the subject area, but there was something about it, about it that really stood out to me. Like I can even think back to like in middle school, there was this one class I took that was, really focused on like computer research, but doing that sort of helped drive like the research that I personally did going into like technology and media. And I mean, but it's one of those things where it's just like you can never imagine like the impact something will have until you're there, and it's just like, oh, that one thing that I did, that's what sparked me to get to where I am now.
Yeah, it's looking back and seeing how all these little details have really started something for you. Like for me, it was my mother and father always like reading books with me as a kid or turning on movies, and that really gave me a passion for the storytelling and the just the engagement of that. It really like left that impression on me, and what do you know, I ended up going into communication of all things. And for you, obviously, the technology. That's actually not a shock to hear.
Yeah, and I mean, but I mean, all of that sort of ties in because for anyone who hasn't seen our previous discussions, I mean, not only are you, of course, now studying in communication, but but you are also like a master of online communities in your own right, as well as that you're a writer as well, or at least aspiring writer.
Yeah, I've not published anything. It's not very good, but hopefully someday I'll get something done. That'd be nice.
How have your personal writings, been over these past few years? Because I don't know if we've really had like a dedicated discussion to that per se.
Um, I've written some short stories. I got into poetry for a bit, but that was really a passing phase. I've written about two halves of novels. One of them I was co-writing with a friend, and they got busy, so we had to drop it when we were almost done. And the other one is my current ongoing work, which is I tried to do NaNoWriMo, but all of a sudden all my classes and family engagements just cropped up combined with a case of writer's block, and I was just like, okay, well, I got part of the way there. You know, like luckily very recently in the past week I finally gotten through my writer's block, but I'm getting there. My plan is to have a at least a fully finished novel, like edited and just rewritten to the point where I'm proud of it, whether or not I can publish it or not, by the time I graduate college in the next couple of years.
Well, I really hope that you're able to, like I said, accomplish that goal. And whenever it is, whether it's by then or sometime in the near far future, whenever you can officially say that you are published, I definitely do want a copy of your work, and I want it signed.
I can do that for you.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm so glad that at least you've been able to like grow and evolve your writing, and to take a step back a bit. So, November is National Novel Writing Month. And so are you able to tell us a little bit more about that for viewers who may not be aware of that?
Sure. So National Novel Writing Month is an organization that hosts this contest for like charity to help aspiring writers. Um, but more importantly, it is this challenge that a bunch of both aspiring and professional writers undertake to write 50,000 words worth of a novel within the month of November, which is very easy for some people and very, very difficult for everyone else. That's a lot of words.
Have you ever gotten close?
No way. No. Um, the way my writing works is I'll write a ton of words in just one sitting, and then I'll have to sit there thinking on where to take it next after that. And sometimes that period of thinking can go on for a couple days, so I have trouble being consistent enough to succeed at that. I think I could get there with enough practice, but I'm not quite at that level yet.
Yeah, and this year, 2023, I attempted to take this on, and it was such a interesting, task to try to take on. I can say right now that I came nowhere close to
It
to
happens.
that goal, but I will say at the very least, I can say that November has has at least taught me, what I need to do to get there.
Hmm.
And so maybe 2024, I might be able to do that, but I don't think it was fully feasible to do it during, you know, during a semester of graduate school, like in the middle of writing research papers to try to, like write the starts of like a novel. I mean, like that's so many different things to write on that yeah, they all started to like overlap on each other, and it just got so confusing.
Yeah, 100%. As I said earlier, the same problems cropped up for me, and I really wish that I had gotten into writing to this extent in high school, back when like we actually had the time for such things. Like, just like we can get it done, but just finding time isn't always as easy as it used to be. Maybe, I mean, we'll see once we get out of schooling and academia and just find time with between our jobs and such. But as of now, we find time where we can. I know for you it's more difficult than most since you're the type to commit yourself to 50,000 different personal projects at once.
Well, I will say that, especially for you having been on so many times, that you definitely know I carry so many different, projects with me at once. Not to mention, work and graduate school and all that stuff. But nevertheless, like I do try to take a good enjoyment in it, whatever I do, and like to fully commit myself to something. But it definitely can take like a toll on you if you don't
Mhm.
also work on balancing everything. And that's been a big focus, at least for me since the first time we spoke in 2021. And so, being a bit mindful of that, you know, even as we were edging towards the end of November 20, this year, it's just like, it's like the it's like if this was me about 4 years ago, I would have somehow managed to try to write the 50,000 words within the last 2 weeks of November. But for me, it's just like, no, I failed this. It's fine. like it's like as long as I could end the month out with an outline, it at least provides me a starting point of knowing where to learn. And I think some of the challenging things is not doing the challenging task, but rather to not do the challenging task.
I don't know if that's very normal, but I'm glad you're uh, figuring something out that works for you.
Well, but it comes to, but nevertheless, though, it comes to knowing yourself,
Hmm.
though, and
Yeah.
knowing what you can and cannot handle. Whereas, yeah, some people can really do something without a question and get it done. Whereas for other people, like for me, I definitely think things through a lot of times, and and I like planning things out. And so I think it all comes to knowing who you are and what you want to do in the future. But speaking of knowing what you want to do in the future, though, um, you know, have you been able to sort of figure out what you want to do after you receive your communications degree in a couple years?
I've gone through a lot of thinking on this. I've come up with various ideas. I haven't quite pinned down what exactly I want to do. Um, I think my most likely scenario is just going into business, as in like as a PR, social media maybe, or like marketing consultant. Um, I've thought about, obviously, as I said earlier, I was thinking probably ideally I'd like to become a writer, but I don't think that I don't think I'll definitely be able to do that right out of college at least. I'm not there yet, as sad as I am to admit it. But uh, but yeah, hopefully I can look back at this interview here like 30 years from now and being like, ah, yes, youth, like I wasn't. I may be 21, but I'm not set on where I'm going. Like a couple weeks ago, I was talking to my composition professor, and she told me that she really liked my presentation skills and said that I should consider going to teaching. And that was just kind of like this surprise to me. And I was like, oh, I could actually imagine myself doing that. And that just kind of threw away my plans of, I want to consider this while I can, because I think this is a path that I wouldn't hate. And honestly, I think that even though I'm probably not going to go that route, I might take it up in retirement.
Well, nevertheless, though, I like that that you took what your professor said like into like deep consideration, and even if it's not you know an immediate route that you want to go on, I like that you're still like this is something I think I can do, and I am, in my personal opinion, I feel like you could do quite well with that because at least throughout our discussions, you've always been a person that that takes deep consideration to what other people have to say, but you can also organize really well, and I feel like you can even use some of that skill set that you have from from managing online communities as well.
Yeah, people on the internet are a lot like children.
But speaking of that, I mean, yeah, are you still working to like actively work in online communities?
Um, Not as much as I was when we first spoke about that. Um, it's just a matter of I've I have more responsibilities than back then, and I can't spend as much time as I used to constantly, as I said earlier, hurting internet people. Um, it's still a big part of my life, especially people like you who I met through such communities. I still keep up with everyone, and I have made a lot of. I'm actually going on a trip in about over a month and a half now to meet up with some friends that I've made over the internet that I've known for about half a decade now. And yeah, it's definitely affected my life in a very positive way. I think it'll probably just have impacts that keep reaching out for the rest of my life. Those communities that I became such a deep part of, uh, and still am. I mean, yeah, I think that that's not just me. I think that's the new normal for our generation, maybe.
Yeah, and you even spoke during our first discussion in 2021, about, though you may be, fluent within online communities, that you had even said over the next few years and the remainder of the 2020s that, we're going to see more and more about yeah, the true power of online communities and the opportunities that it allows. And so even seeing, today in our post-COVID world, I mean, you can sort of see like the influence that, that these communities have on our everyday lives, even if we're not direct participants.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the more and more you see that, especially people like content creators, authors, podcasters, YouTubers, all these people who are very influential people, they're influenced in turn by the communities that crop up around them or that they partake in. And the influence of, and like, I think it's rare for people, like especially younger generations, to not at least have one or two online communities. Even it's become strange for even the older generations to not keep up with people on social media like Facebook, for example, with their own friends and use that as a tool for that. That even back when I was talking about it previously, it wasn't to this extent. A large part of that is the impact of COVID, as you said.
Yeah, and I mean it's so interesting to even to think about this stuff and in detail and to see like it's like if we're doing this now, like how will this be a few years from now, a decade from now, and only time will really tell.
Yeah, for sure. I would be surprised if I was wrong in saying that it will continue to increase like this. However, we really don't know, and I wouldn't be surprised if, while I'm not disproved, the end result ends up being something I can't even imagine, like, especially with we probably shouldn't get into this right now, but stuff like the growth of AI is definitely having a more, greater and greater impact on such communities, and it's evolving them in ways that no one can really say.
Yeah, that is so true. And I mean it's so interesting, yeah, delving into how modern day technology is really impacting communication, especially interpersonal communication.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure if you know this, but I know the last time we spoke, I was finishing out my undergrad education, but now as a graduate student, my master's degree is actually in lifespan and digital communication and the intersection you know, of relational communication with digital media studies, which literally is sort of the topic that we're
Hmm.
speaking about now.
That's I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Um, yeah, maybe I should be interviewing you.
Well, one of these days we honestly should do that. I mean, with this being your fourth appearance now.
Yeah, actually, that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, and you know, and I will say, so now that you are, I believe, a junior in college.
Hmm.
Yeah, so now in your junior year, how has it been really like, adjusting to college? Because I know when you originally started in 2021, it was still sort of in the midst of, of the COVID-19 pandemic, like edging towards the end. But now, towards the end of 2023, like we're in a very different place than we were when you first started. And so, how has all of this been for you?
Um, it's it's definitely been an experience. There's a reason college is considered one of the lifelong formative experiences that people who go through it have. Like I started out, it's a bit different for me than for most people because the college I'm going to is in my hometown, so it's not a exact. It's less of a new environment, though. Like I still moved out from my parents' house I live in an apartment now, but that has definitely had an impact. Not living alone, but living with a roommate rather than your family, having to pay your own bills, having to commute to class, and not having to just sit there in various rooms all day doing nothing like I did in high school. Um, it's really just a fundamentally different experience, and I believe I mentioned this in some of the previous interviews, but I had a lot of trials early on in my college career, not just adjusting, but also just developing new relationships and keeping them active and keeping my mental stability in check. And I think that over time, it's really gotten a lot better. I've found a better major. I've made friends. I've found a good roommate who I've been with. This is the second year now, and I really just, if I had to sum it up, it's not been bad, and I think that's a good place to be.
Well, I'm glad at least that yeah, I mean that everything's been working out for you though, and that I mean, and as you were saying, like it's sort of like a process. I mean, it's not like a oh I'm in college now, everything's changed as much as TV and media would like to share, but you know, but it's sort of like a process. Like you go in like wanting to not just learn, but like meet people, meet a community, and and sort of better understand yourself. And I'm glad to hear that that you've been even able to better understand who you are as a person, what you want to do both now and in the future.
Yeah, um, I guess you could say it's just maturity. Late coming, but never unwelcome, I'd say. I'm not quite there yet, as y'all can probably tell from this interview, though.
Well, I mean, I always like I say enjoy speaking with you, and I sort of like that we've. I really like that we've had our discussions spread out because you can even see like the growth between between our discussions. From both hearing like how the you were originally a visualization major, and then just announcing that you were a communication major. Now you are with taking classes next semester, but then even like the growth of like even my own interviewing skills between then and now. And so and so I mean it's so interesting like thinking back and sort of like taking a lifespan approach to like viewing who we are and our own development and maturity.
Yeah, like I don't really, but thinking back onto how it used to be back into the previous interviews, it really just puts into perspective more than just thinking back normally does because as we've gone over a lot, it's been a while, a lot has happened in between, and you can really track development through milestones. I'm sure it's the same for you with all of these videos and podcasts and stuff that you've been making for who knows how long. Just slow. I bet if you watched like your earliest ones, it'd be utterly unrecognizable. Might be funny.
Yeah, I will say, like in preparation for for even doing today's discussion, I listened back to the first discussion that we had,
Oh no.
and I mean, it was so interesting because I can even see like my own growth as a podcaster, even and a communicator as a whole, and like what I'm doing differently, but at the same time, some of the early stuff I was doing to set up where I am now. And so I feel like with any of us looking back at our previous work, you know, I think it really helped show growth, but also dedication to the craft that we stuck with it and we didn't just give up because it wasn't working, but rather it's like, okay, we did this, we like the product, but let's keep going. And and the natural growth that follows with it.
Yeah, that old saying about how you're not an expert until you've reached 1,000 hours of practice in the craft. I'm sure you've done a lot more than that over all these years.
Well, I think between editing, recording, and everything, I mean, it probably is up there. I mean, I don't keep a log of how many hours I have been working on everything, but I mean, it is crazy to think about because even now, like I started this current show, Tansson Talks, back in February of 2023. But between these and my previous shows, I mean, before even starting this one, I had 250 episodes between the shows, and so it's crazy to think about the growth that happens even between these small moments.
Yeah, I mean it's the little steps that change you. I've like it's said that life is just a process of change, and that fact about how the body is completely reset every 7 years, new cells and whatever. Like, or I guess ship of Theseus and all that. You take small steps to improving yourself, and suddenly you're something entirely different from how you were.
I've always, over these past 2 years, I have been like highly intrigued by the ship of Theseus. In all honesty, and like you're saying, for anyone who has no idea what in the world we're talking about, the ship of Theseus. Actually, if you'd like to explain it, you can
I'll
feel
explain
free.
it, sure. So, the story is that Theseus took his ship out and sailed across the Mediterranean. And over time, the boards wore out, the ropes got old, so they were replaced piece by piece. And by the time he returned, the ship was made of entirely new parts as it was when it came back, thus posing the question on whether it was the same ship he left with or not.
Which I feel like is such an interesting question. And especially with the additional theory with that is if you take all the old parts and put them together, is that the ship or is the new one the ship?
Hmm. Yeah, actually, when I was younger, I used to find this a terrifying hypothesis. And as strange it is, I came up with the conclusion that that meant that the inevitable assumption is that since I didn't believe the new one could be considered the same as the old one, you could consider yourself to be dying every second as you slowly change the person you were having died, which is kind of depressing, but it's how I felt at the time. And eventually, I came to the very deep philosophical realization that that doesn't matter, even if it were the case. I mean, it's a slow shift, and the person you are is always changing, but that doesn't mean that the person you were is any less relevant to who you are today.
That is so true. And I mean, even looking towards the future, I know you mentioned your long term goals and thoughts, but I guess do you have any goals like to end out 2023 and enter into 2024?
Um, well, I've never been one for New Year's resolutions. I'm the type of person who, if I came up with one, I'd just be like, I don't feel like following through. I wouldn't even get to the point of making the gym membership. I would just sort of go to make the call and be like, actually, no, I don't think I want to do this 5 minutes after deciding I wanted to do this. But for me personally, I kind of just want to keep my momentum going. I want to keep passing my courses, getting this college degree out of the way so I can move on, and continuing with my writing. I think just keeping up with what I'm doing and not faltering would be my only real goal.
Well, I definitely hope that you're able to, to accomplish your goal and to keep moving forward with it. And yeah, and in terms of like the New Year's resolutions, I mean, I feel like they're not really made to like withstand time. In fact, there's even a National Give Up Your Resolutions Day on January 17th, um, which is a real thing, by the way. But I feel like one of the reasons as to why it doesn't work is not because it's a bad idea to try to better yourself, but it's the thought that January 1st always starts off the new year, but there's only one January 1st. And it's the thought that we need to wait to, to come up with a goal, as opposed to just going after our actual goals, because like if we really really wanted to go after something, why aren't we doing it now? Is there a reason? Sometimes there is a legitimate reason, like like writing 50,000 words at the end of the semester, right before exams. That's a little strenuous. That might actually need to wait until January, um but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Like, and I think part of it is yes, since it's January 1st, let's make a resolution. It's always going to be something unrealistic and very difficult. So people choose hard resolutions, and I think you're totally right about how there's less meaning in making a promise to do something because of like a holiday or an event than to just deciding to do that because you're really interested in it or you really that's something you care about, you want to better yourself. Like you said, if it wasn't just random and arbitrary because of the event, why were you not doing it already? And you're probably more likely to just do it if you just randomly decide I'm going to do this than if you are like pushed into it by like the peer pressure of everyone else coming up with resolutions.
That is so true. And Justin, I've really been enjoying like the way that we've been conveying this conversation and just the flow of it. And I think it really helps to show too that yeah, like I feel like this discussion really builds on our previous discussions while also sort of standing alone and showing our growth that we've been discussing throughout this, episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's like as weird as the tangents we've been going on are, I think it's really just centered as just a retrospection on how the both of us have really changed over time. And just to think about, it's looking back on the old ones as a time capsule of who we were. And I think that's not just something that's kind of fun to do. It's also something that I think is good for us to really just look back and it's like scrapbook of your former self.
Yeah, and that's something I really like about this format of podcasting too, especially with the video podcast, is that you can truly like almost like take a look back in time to see where you were, at a certain time, and you get to sort of see and hear like your inner thoughts like as they were then, and like to revisit them in the future is it's so interesting, especially when certain things change and you can be like, oh, like I was interested in this. I didn't remember I was interested in this. But you know, but being able to capture these moments is I think yeah, is so I don't know. I want to say like it feels so important, at least to me, to do it. And I've always been someone that like wants to capture the moment, whether it's with a camera or with a discussion like this. But with our digital world right now, I feel like we have introduced so many different ways to capture a moment. Like we have our smartphones with us that we can use to record and capture all these moments, but at the same time though it's like we almost now have like a little bit of an oversaturation of all of these moments that we're never going to look back
Hmm.
at. Um, Whereas, if you just had the one camera and were able to take one picture, then you're more likely, I guess, to cherish that picture than you were for the hundreds of pictures we may take throughout a year. And I don't know, maybe that might just be thinking too much into it, but
I think it's a
I don't know.
trade-off of like one memory that's very deeply preserved, to a lot of memories that you can go back and access at any time. But yeah, I think we also have neglected to mention at this point that it's not just important and valuable and interesting to think back on the past and how you used to be. It's also deeply embarrassing. It's oh man, the previous two podcast episodes, there's some stuff I was talking about that ugh, it's not bad per se, but man, yeah, it's just a bit embarrassing, I'd say.
Well, what's funny about that too is even going through some of my very first ones, it's just like because obviously like you always want to put out your best work possible,
Hmm.
but sometimes like when you look back at some stuff that you've done in the past, it's just like, oh, this is what I thought was the best work possible, and I mean, and it's not like a knock on your former self, but it's sort of like highlighting the growth, but I don't know. I feel like it's kind of fun going back for those moments, once you take away you know, I don't know, when you just kind of have fun with it. And yeah, it's like whether or not we agree with it or find it interesting. It's like, it is us though.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that it's me makes me hate him more. It's worse. It's not just related to me. This is my fault.
I feel like it's always such an interesting process going back to this stuff, and I think we can only hope that we improve for the future. We can't change the past, and I don't know if we'd ever really, at least for me, really want to change the past per se. But I think as long as we continue like growing and improving for our future, I mean, I'm excited to see what the future has to hold.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it could be worse. I could have gone on a podcast in middle school. That would have been bad.
So, so I guess as a follow up to that, before we begin gradually wrapping up, so how would you say that you have changed from middle school to
Oh
now?
boy. Um, well, I guess I would say that I've really started to grow more of a personal sense of feeling. Like when I was in middle school, I was always worrying about how a lot more. I mean, this is still part of me to an extent, but about how other people saw me. But the bigger flaw was I had a very, very odd in a middle schooler sort of way understanding of how people would see me based on things I was doing. And I tended to get really too deeply invested in things like that, into senses of belonging that are sort of manufactured and not really there. And I've also just been through a lot of unfortunate memories and bad events and embarrassing actions that have really taught me a lot more about how the world works and how I should act that are just a part of growing up.
Those moments of our everyday lives that you know, I don't know. It's
Will
just like,
haunt our
oh, okay,
dreams for the rest of our lives.
that is very true, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so funny whenever you think back to your younger self. It's just like, oh, I did that. That's fun.
Yeah, I think everyone can relate to that. It's just, especially like early puberty, of that period of just no, just I want a time machine, please don't do that. Oh man.
If you were to give advice to your middle school self, what would that be?
It doesn't really matter. He wouldn't listen. Like I would really have to be about specific events because but a lot of those things I realized was a terrible idea immediately after doing it. but I was at that stage of life, I kept doing that sort of thing anyway. So like, I'd like to give him wisdom, but words of wisdom wouldn't do anything. Maybe a smack upside the head would probably be better. I'd like to send him that.
Even though thus far in 2023 we don't, quite have that capacity just yet. I think it is just so interesting though, like reflecting back on the past to, prepare for our future. And like I said, and before we go ahead and head into the final thoughts, I did actually want to, to ask a little further. So right now in college, like, do you have any, like, are you involved in any sort of extracurricular activities? Or how has your and how has like your work-life balance been for you in terms of your education?
For extracurriculars, part of like organizations, it's like I've been in the same I always was, but it's been reduced because I mostly hang out with friends directly than rather as part of events and so on. My work-life balance, I like to keep it further on the life side. It's a lot better for my mental health. I mean, I'm the type of person where if you assign me 4 months to do an essay, I'll get it done the last week. um, I guess it's periods of intense, strenuous work to catch up and long periods of just sitting back, relaxing, spending time doing things like going on my friend's podcast, not doing my work. Uh, it's been good. I think that sort of work-life balance is, while it's not for everyone, I think it's the right thing for me.
I love that sentiment. Thank you so much, Justin, for like I said, for coming back on here and for speaking with us. For just this really fun but yet also very reflective conversation.
Yeah, I'm always glad to come on. I'm sure I'll see you again on this show in like another year and a half.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy having you on, and I feel like each of our conversations have all been very different, and so I'm very excited and curious to to see what our next one will be.
Yeah, I'm excited to look back on this episode with just as much shame and embarrassment.
Well, nevertheless, though, like I said, this truly has been really fun, and as we're closing out, first and foremost, I did want to ask if anyone is is interested in continuing to view your story. Is there any way that people can follow you online? If
Um, yeah, I mean, if anyone, I don't really do much social media, so not really. If anyone stumbles into me online or finds my email from the, I think it was on the banner, whatever. If anyone finds me, feels free to talk with me. I'd be happy to discuss whatever.
Well, that's great to hear. And and last but certainly not least, I did want to say, for those who are still watching and tuned in, what are some of your last thoughts that you want to use to close out this discussion here on the Tansson Talk Show?
I have to think of something like philosophical and wise. Okay. Um, nope, got nothing. Have a good time, people. Tune into his show next week, I guess.
Well, nevertheless, I hope that viewers do. And honestly, in terms of philosophical, I feel like this whole conversation has
Yeah,
been
I'm kind of
rather
tapped out now.
philosophical. But yes, for those of you watching or listening, thank you all so much for tuning in to this discussion. I greatly appreciate it as always. And be sure to tune in next week as we continue on our mission to bring people together. I'll see you all later. Take care.